Right, I'm just going to catch you up with a bit of what's been going on last few weeks. I've been on the River Yare festival. I absolutely love the River Yare. I went there. I grew up in Norfolk, and I think it's probably no secret that it's my favourite venue. It took me a long while actually when I was younger to actually do any good. I went sort of for 3 or 4 years, and I think the nature of the venue made it a very difficult place to fish. It wasn't an easy place to go fishing, so I used to struggle a little bit to sort of suss it out. I mean, you chuck your feeder out and your tip's bent right round with all your line tightening up. When you're young, that's a sort of a difficult thing to comprehend. But as time went on, I got more and more used to it, established on what's going on, and sort of by the time I got to, you know, 19, 20, 21, that sort of age, I used to do quite well there. It was difficult to do well consistently. There was an incredibly high standard of angler there. So, you know, it was a real sort of learning curve in big, powerful rivers, and I really enjoyed it. Since then, I've been back regularly. I sort of try to pop back once a year if I can. Either to you know, a double header at a weekend, or you know, a festival or something like that, and I absolutely love it when I go. I think my trips, I'm quite fortunate really, because my trips coincide with the fishing starting to really get good. Most rivers come on in August. I mean, you know, I'm just looking at results last few weeks, you can tell roach are feeding everywhere, skimmers are having a chew there as well, and there's a lot of fish to catch. So it's nice going to a river where you get plenty of bites, and that's what this festival threw up. I felt last year I was a little bit one-dimensional. I'd caught 33 pound of roach and 26 pound of roach 2 years ago, cupping my bait in, what I call stacking them up. I basically cut my bait in, stacked the fish up and hammered them. When the bites ran out, I cut bait in again, and it worked brilliantly. The only problem was I couldn't get that to work this time round. And last year I tried to get that to work and it wasn't quite right, and I adapted a little bit late in my eyes. I wasn't as proactive as I could have been. So effectively this time, what I thought was I need to keep very open-minded and not just go with the one type of approach. So I started off by going and having a practice, cupped my bait in, didn't really work very well, and I started making some small balls and throwing them in regularly. I had to vary the amount of feed in those balls. Too much bait was never, you know, missed a lot of bites, not enough bait and they wouldn't stay, but I seemed to get it right, and I felt like I'd learned a little bit about what to do for the next day. I started the next day. I had an hour on the feeder, the first day of the festival, caught next to nothing. Really disappointed. The thing is with the Yare, the river, it flows one way, then stops for about 20 minutes or so, and then takes 10-15 minutes to start flowing properly the other way. So it's a little bit, you can't just settle on one direction. So when we started the match, the tide just happened to be almost stood, so I thought if I start on a feeder, gives the fish a chance on the pole to get used to the other flow, and I might nick a few skimmers. It backfired. When I went on the pole, I thought I'll start cupping my bait, got to start how I know I've caught a big weight, and then just see what happens. And after 40 minutes of that, it wasn't really happening. So, you know, by this point we're an hour and a half into the match, and it's not happening at all, and I'm a little bit disappointed because it's not quite how I want it to be. The fish are small and it's not right. So I've got my mix and I've started throwing those little balls, and I've instantly had a response, and the fishing was really good. Caught steady away, really motoring towards the end of the ebb tide, and I ended up with 20 pound 4 ounces of roach on the pole in the best part of probably 3.5 hours, I would say. I was over the moon with that, felt that was a really nice weight. But then when I walked further up, there'd been a couple of 15s, a 16, and then been a 22 pound 10 of skimmers further up. And that's the beauty of the Yare. You're not going there and it's like, oh, it's a pole match crunching roach. People can make their own decision on how they want to fish. And Brian Gooch had a lovely, lovely net of fish. He probably had a dozen skimmers, a dozen big roach, and a couple of eels for 22 pound. That's a really nice net of fish. So fair play to him. That left me second in the section. Big, you know, there was, because it was every other peg, it was, you know, we were all quite a long way apart. So you know, it's one of those. I don't think I'd have caught, well, I think I'd have been lucky to catch that of skimmers where I was. I was pegged 77, which isn't that hot an area for skimmers. So walked away with a second and thought, well, we'll see what happens over the next few days. One thing that was obvious, it wasn't going to be 3 wins in my eyes that won the festival. At that time, I thought it might be, but as it turned out, because there was hot pegs for skimmers, unless somebody drew the best peg in the section every day, which is obviously possible, I think that was always going to be unlikely that somebody was going to get 3 wins. So I felt if you could do consistently well every day, you'd have a chance. The next day, I drew a nice peg, 96. Totally made my mind up what I was going to do from the start this time. We had a little bit of extra flood tide, and on the whistle, I've just started straight off with the little balls. The small balls, I've not even put any bait in, I've just started throwing small balls, and I've started catching roach steadily. And again, as the tide turned and we ran out the other way, the fishing got better and better. I've had a roach, a really big roach, 2 pound 2 ounces. I've had a great big skimmer. I've had some other decent roach, and then I've had a lot of, say, ounce roach. I probably had 200 plus ounce fish. Maggot was a really good hook bait. I could often catch 3 or 4 fish on a maggot. It seems like they must attack the bait quite cleanly, because the maggot wasn't always broken, so I could just re-hook, flip my rig back out and go out and catch another fish, so that was handy. And by the end of the match, I knew I had a decent weight, and I weighed 26 pound of roach. It won the match. 16 pound was second in my section, and I was really happy with that performance. I felt I was switched on, I was in a good area for roach, and just keeping my rhythm nice, throwing a fish every second a ball every second fish worked really well. So that put me in a nice position. I was then winning the festival after 2 days, joint first, so I needed a good last day. I had an interesting draw last day. I was on a very poor peg in my eyes, 128. I'm always honest with my draws. If I think I was on a good one like I was the day before, I'll stand up and say it. If I've drawn a peg that I think that's going to take a lot harder to try and get something from it, then you know I like to be honest with what's in front of me. You know how hard it was, because after an hour I was blanking, nothing at all. So I thought, oh dear, this isn't working well at all. No roach on the pole, no bites on the tip. I thought, right, I need to commit to the tip for a while, because I need a run of skimmers or something to bring me back into this match. As if by some sort of miracle that happened. I had a 2 pounder, a pounder, I had 5 around about 8 to 10 ounce in the next 45 minutes. That brought me back in the match. I probably put 6 pound in the net, a few eels, a roach. And then over the course of the next hour it slowed up a lot again, but I just caught an odd fish. I had a little hybrid, a decent roach. I think I had another 10 ounce skimmer, and I came off the feeder probably having about 8 or 9 pound, although it was hard to judge what I had. And then an hour and a half to go. By this point the ebb's really going, because the tide's changing every day, and I've had a really nice run of fish on the pole. What was very interesting was caster was the best bait, because there was a big stamper roach. I tried a fluoro maggot, caught a lot of fish on a fluoro maggot, but they were not quite as consistently big. I put a caster on last 45 minutes and it was absolutely brilliant. I didn't catch loads of fish, but I had another skimmer, probably a pound and a half, possibly more. I had 10 roach that were probably 8 ounce, and I reckon I put 9 pound in the net in that last hour and a half. And I sort of finished the match thinking, well, I couldn't have asked a lot more there. I've had that little run I needed on the tip. I've had that run on the pole. Again, the little balls were nice. Just easing the float. It was so important to just hold on to the float as long as you could. The flow was very strong. I was using a 3 gram float, and I was just easing it through, then letting it go, and you just nick those odd roach. And that was the key for me, understanding how the float needed to move. That only comes by fishing it. The more you fish it, the more you start to understand what's going on. You can't just pick the pole up and expect to know how it's going to work. You've got to fish it to know. It was really interesting. I weighed 18 pound 10 ounce. Again, second in my section. Steve Clark had a great 20 pound weight. I'd heard he'd had, well, Steve told me he had 10 pound in just over the first hour when I was blanking. So it gives you an idea of the difference in pegs along the stretch. I mean, he's 10 pegs away, so anything can happen. especially on a windy river. So what you've got to accept is when that happens, it's beating the rest. There was two 15-pounds down there. I mean, up where we were, it wasn't quite as good. So I sort of thought, well, again, I feel like I'm had a smooth 3 days fishing. Again, like I say, I always like to be honest. If I feel I've made mistakes, you guys know, you watch the blog every week, I'll come here and say it. If I feel I've got the right side of it, then I like to talk about getting it right, because then it reinforces it in your head what you're doing right, which I think is really important. Anyway, I finished up with 5 points and a weight of £65, which won the festival. So really pleased to win the festival. It is my favourite venue. It is what I class as my home venue, you know, the venue that always holds a place in my heart, even though I don't fish it anywhere as much as all the local guys do. And they're all the guys that fish it are fantastic, and they were really kind, and you know, gave me some kind comments on the win. So it was really great. So that was it. That was my 3 days. Absolutely fantastic. And I came home, and then I went down to Evesham at the weekend for a bloodworm match. Bloodworm fishing at Evesham, completely different from the Yare, but again a river. I'm really into the rivers at the moment. Drew peg 70. Don't want to dwell too much on Evesham, because I'm going to be blogging about it next few weeks. But put it this way, I had a nice match. Caught 3 decent gusters, sort of like a hybridy fish. And then a lot of small roach, and I mean a lot. It was 15 feet deep, so it was hard work, but I just kept them coming. I had a bite all day, and when the scales arrived, I thought I'd have 6 or 7 pound. Based on the fact I've been on the Yare for 3 days, I had 9 pounds, so I was a little bit, I'm pretty good with my guessing, so I was a little bit embarrassed there, but 9 pound was 4th in the match, which I was absolutely delighted about. But a great battle with Dean Barlow next door, who's a fantastic angler. He's had £8.12. He had a completely different net of fish and a lot of dumpy perch. We've fished in a different style, and obviously I've just nicked it on the day. Matt Godfrey won the match with £10.14 of roach. Boys on fire, we know this, brilliant fishing. So you know, we've got good chances going into the Evesham weekend, certainly on the team front, I think, and obviously on an individual level. I feel that sort of we were quite switched on with the fishing, those of us that are talking about it, and it's going to be really exciting. So 4th in the match, great result. There was nearly 70 there. So I've had a lovely 4 days fishing. You know, £65 on a proper strong flowing river, £9 of more refined fishing that, you know, on Saturday. That really is some fantastic fishing this week. Obviously, if you get a chance, get on the rivers next few weeks, because they're solid at the moment. So why not get out there, give it a go, really work at your fishing. When it's flowing, it really is enjoyable. Okay, catch up with you guys later. Thanks, bye.